My name is Isha Choti from 8th standard. I am student of Bajaj Science Center Pragyan batch. Today I am going to talk about the topic definition of living things and are viruses living. So what are living things? Living thing refers to any organism or life form that possesses or show characteristics of life or being alive. The term living came from the Old English "living". The origin of life is also referred as abiogenesis. And this is how organisms are classified into five kingdoms that are Monera, Protista, Plantae, Fungi, and Animalia. This is according to Robert H. Whittaker from 1969. Then, what are the characteristics of living things? A living thing should have a cellular organization, that is, its smallest unit of life should be a cell. It should perform respiration. It should have a fixed lifespan in which it will grow and eventually die. It should perform nutrition, reproduction. It should respond to stimuli and perform excretion. Then what are viruses? A virus is a submicroscopic infectious agent. Viruses exist in form of independent particles or virons consisting of a genetic material that is either DNA or RNA, a protein coat and a capsid. It is also called link between living and non-living things. So, viruses have some characteristics of non-living things while some of living things. The non-living things were they lack the key characteristics such as cell structure that are generally considered necessary criteria for life, while the living ones are viruses carry genetic material, reproduce and evolve through natural selection. Because they possess some but not all such characteristics, viruses have been described as organisms at the edge of life. The living characteristics of viruses are they can mutate and change characteristics. They contain either DNA or RNA as genetic material coated with protein. They respond to stimuli such as heat, chemicals, and radiations. They are transmitted from infected hosts to healthy ones from communicable diseases. They reproduce inside host cell and produce copies of themselves, and they show irritability, which is a character only of living organisms. Then the non-living characteristics are the cell wall, organelles, cytoplasm, etc. are absent in viruses. They can't grow and metabolize food. They can't multiply on their own, and they don't even respire. They can be crystallized and stored for a very long time, like other non-living things. They require a living host cell to perform nearly every biological function necessary for their survival. Then, are viruses alive? Actually, scientists are not sure whether viruses are living or non-living. In general, scientists use a list of criteria to determine if something is alive. Let us look through some of them. Then, living things have cells, but viruses, they don't have cells. They don't have a cell membrane or other organelles. They have a protein coat that protects its genetic material. The living things use energy, but viruses outside the host cell, they doesn't use energy. They only become active when they come in contact with the host cell. But once activated, they use the host cell's energy and tools to make more viruses. Living things reproduce by making copies of their DNA, but viruses, it inserts its genetic material into the host cell. This causes the cell to make copy of virus DNA rather than its own. Living things respond to stimuli. Viruses also interact with the cell they infect, but most of it is simply based on virus anatomy. Example, they bind to the receptors of the cells, inject their genetic material into the cell, and evolve over time within an organism. So, summary living characteristics of viruses are they could reproduce in the living cells which they infect. They use their genetic information to force the host cell to replicate themselves. The non-living characteristics are they do not carry out metabolic processes independently. They cannot move and reproduce on their own. To conclude, viruses are living. Now you may say that viruses don't use energy outside the host cell, so how are they living? But they can be called as parasites. One more question that arises is the viruses can't reproduce independently. So they are known as intracellular parasites. Example, Rickettsia conuri. It is a type of bacteria which also does not reproduce on its own and takes help of host, same as viruses does. The viruses are not active while outside the host, so they become inactive the way bacteria does by forming a cyst around itself when it thinks the conditions are unfavorable for him. Finally, viruses can be said as obligate intracellular parasite. These were my references. Thank you.